and welcome everybody, and this is EllAstrology, and today I'm going to tell you guys about our upcoming Mercury retrograde in Scorpio. So we will be experiencing our last Mercury retrograde this year from the 31st of October until the 20th of November, and it will be retrograding in the sign of Scorpio. This is quite a special Mercury retrograde as it is happening right in the middle of Scorpio season. Mercury retrograde is the most hyped astrological, and the reason for this is because it occurs quite commonly. We usually have about 3 to 4 retrogrades a year, and the reason Mercury retrogrades are so important is because Mercury rules over our mind and how we think. And when Mercury is in retrograde, we think differently. This is an astrological aspect that affects everybody differently, and it does have a noticeable, significant effect. So we are in the middle of Scorpio season. What Scorpio season represents is intensity, deep, meaningful connections with people, sexuality, the hidden things in life, as well as death and rebirth. So Scorpio season is a time for deep introspection. This is a time when we look inside ourselves and we try and figure out where we are headed and who we are. We also analyze our interactions and relationships with other people, and we identify which relationships give us a deeper meaning and a deeper connection and which don't. So Scorpio season is a time where you let go of your old self and you get born into the new. It is a time when you figure out what has not been serving you in terms of your habits, your thoughts, your convictions, and just your life in general. And during Scorpio season, we let go of the old us and we get reborn into a new, better version of ourselves. So that is why there is a lot of internal reflection during this time. Self-understanding is incredibly important to a Scorpio, and during this time, we try and understand ourselves. We also tap into our more sexual side, and we are more willing to open up and connect. So what happens when there is a Mercury retrograde right in Scorpio season, as well as in the sign of Scorpio? So Mercury turns everything upside down, and it basically confuses everything. So this will mean there will be some confusion when it comes to the side of ourselves that we need to let go of, and the side that does not serve us anymore, and the side of ourselves that we need to evolve into. So figuring this out can be challenging during this retrograde. And there might be times when you identify a side of yourself that you need to let go of, but you might not be sure if you should, or if your understanding of it is right. There can also be difficulty and confusion when it comes to connecting with people. So we might feel and see connections between us and another person that might not exist, or we might feel much deeper emotions than what we should. So it will be very important to be mindful during this time of the thoughts and the emotions that you have, as what you will experience will be very confusing and shouldn't be taken at face value. Because Mercury also rules over our mind, and because it will be retrograde in Scorpio, which is the intense sign, we will be having some very intense obsessive thoughts. So when you think of something, you might obsess over it, and it will be difficult to get it out of your mind. This is also a time where a lot of us will be prone to increased anxiety and tension and stress. The reason for this is because everything we think during this time is going to be amplified. So it's almost going to be as if there is a spotlight being shined onto your thoughts. And what you're thinking is so much more intense, so much more overpowering, and it will have a much more significant effect on you. So this will be quite a challenging Mercury retrograde because we are usually encouraged to let go during Scorpio season. Like I said, to let go of our old self and what does not serve us. However, because there is so much confusion during a retrograde, we aren't really going to know what side of ourselves we need to let go. We aren't really going to know what people we need to let go of. We won't know what thoughts we need to put more attention into. And this is actually going to be one of the more challenging retrogrades and Scorpio seasons that we have been through. Because when Mercury retrogrades, it likes to swing your mind from side to side. So the one moment you might feel like you know who you are and you figured everything out, and then the next moment everything is confusing to you again. So if you do go through this Mercury retrograde, do understand it's only a temporary transit. And after the 20th of November, things will become a lot more easier. What will end up happening is after the Mercury retrograde, when we enter Sagittarius season and when Mercury enters Sagittarius as well. Because this Scorpio season has shaken us and we won't actually be able to discover ourselves and let go of our old selves as efficiently as we usually would be able to during a Scorpio season. So where we'd usually look inside ourselves to find ourselves when Sagittarius season hits afterwards, we are going to be a lot more adventurous, a lot more outgoing, and we might want to travel and kind of spread our wings a bit in order to find ourselves instead. So instead of finding ourselves inside ourselves, we'll be more inclined to finding ourselves in the outside world. By this, I don't mean in other people. By this, I mean in the outside world through broadening your perception and understanding of things. So if you aren't able to figure yourself out or build extremely deep connections this Scorpio season, don't be too concerned. The stars are in your favor, and after the retrograde, you will be able to find yourself again. So how will this Mercury retrograde affect your sign? Aries, Mercury will retrograde for your 8th house, which is the house of Scorpio. During this retrograde, you might want to shut yourself off from other people, and you'll probably be inclined to spending a lot of time on your own. This retrograde period, you might be very confused internally, because with Mercury in your 8th house, your thoughts are basically turned inward. Taurus, Mercury will be moving through your 7th house of relationships. This basically means that there will be quite an upstir in the relationship area of your life. There could be a little bit of confusion, and you will be thinking a lot about this. Trying to figure out what to do in terms of a partnership will be the main thing on your mind. Gemini, Mercury will be moving through your 6th house of health, service, and work. You will need to pay extra attention to your health, as this is something that can be adversely affected, and trying to focus at work might be quite challenging during this retrograde. Coming to an understanding as to how you are helpful and needed might also be a little bit challenging. Cancer, your 5th house of self-expression is going to be affected, which means that you will not be able to express yourself as creatively as what you usually can. Or not even just creatively, just trying to express yourself might be a bit of a challenge during this time. Leo, your 4th house of family is going to be affected, which basically means there can be a bit of an upstir in your family life, and you'll have to focus a lot on that. Virgo, Mercury will retrograde in your 3rd house of communication, which means that you will have challenges expressing as well as communicating. Libra, your 2nd house of finances is going to be affected. So you will have to be very, very careful when it comes to your spending habits, and you'll have to think very hard before you actually spend your money. Scorpio, your 1st house of identity is going to be affected. So you will be doing a lot of thinking in terms of who you actually are and your own personal identity. Sagittarius, the 12th house of your subconscious is going to be affected, which means there might be a few thoughts and emotions that pop into your head from your subconscious side of your mind that you weren't too aware of, that you will have to work through. Capricorn, it is affecting your 11th house of friendship and community. So there can be a little bit of drama or misunderstanding in your peer group. Aquarius, your 10th house of career and social image is going to be affected. So how you project yourself into the world in terms of your image is something that you might have challenges with. And then Pisces, your 9th house of learning and spirituality is going to be affected, which means trying to learn, trying to retain information or study might be very challenging during this retrograde. So how can you survive this Mercury retrograde? It is advised not to travel during a retrograde. However, this is not always possible. So if you will be traveling, do make sure that all your plans are in place. If you'll be traveling by car, make sure that your car has been serviced. If you will be traveling by plane, make sure that your actual travel is insured as well. So it is very encouraged to let go of things that do not serve you during Scorpio season. However, because Mercury will be in retrograde, it is going to be difficult to figure out what you need to let go of. So it is advised to hold up and wait until after Mercury retrograde before you start cutting your ties. It will also be wise to think twice before you express yourself or before you speak. Because Mercury rules communication, during this time, communication will be jumbled up, so people will not be able to understand what you're saying as easily. Electronics are also known to give issues during this time, so do be sure that you back up all your information And maybe avoid purchasing any new electronics as it is known that electronics can give you more issues during a retrograde period. It's also incredibly important to remain as mindful as you possibly can and aware. So think twice before you act and try and avoid taking on too many tasks that can overwhelm you. It's also advised to avoid making plans, as things might not always go according to plan during this time. And then last but not least, try and avoid people from your past. You will not be thinking clearly, and you might let people back into your life that are supposed to stay in your past. So this is your EllAstrology report on our upcoming Mercury retrograde. If you guys have anything to add, please let me know in the comments. If you guys enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you guys want to see some more astrology content, be sure to subscribe to my channel. I'll see you guys next time, and good luck for this retrograde.